Hey, and welcome to StAC's 100, the show where we take a look into the future, or perhaps a future.
We're talking to two teachers who spent 3 days at a special event run by Singularity University. It was formed by some Silicon Valley tech entrepreneurs.
The focus is what the world may look like in 20, 50, or even more years.
Concepts like artificial intelligence, genetic engineering, and exponential change are pretty unknown to most of us, but not to our guests today.
Welcome to Mr. Dekkers, and also welcome to Mr.
Mr. Aldamland,
Yeah.
well done.
So, Mr. Dekkers, what was the focus of the event that you went to?
It was an opportunity for educators and also business leaders, which made it quite interesting, to look at the world right now and examine particular trends that are taking place and focus on that exponential change happening in various parts of the world. For us, looking at education, changes that are happening there. For a lot of the business people, it's also, I think for them, they were looking at opportunities that they could tap into. But that term exponential change, that was a biggie that actually came through every single one of the 3 days.
Wow.
Mr. Aldamland, when you were there, what were you thinking about?
I was thinking about, my big thing was how scary it was, you know, how threatening it was to the way we live our lives now and how we're going to have to change dramatically to cope with it. I was thinking, you know, what impact is this going to have on the classroom? What impact is this going to have on work? I was really excited about finding out those sort of things. And to be honest with you, the conference lived up to all the hype and all my expectations.
So, you looked at artificial intelligence, or AI, and so, if you just want to explain for our audience, what is AI?
Artificial intelligence is basically non-human decision-making and intelligence that can interact with and potentially take over all the roles of humans. We thought initially it was just the basic menial type of tasks, but we found out very quickly that even decision-making and evaluation can be done by AI, which was really quite frightening, but really quite exciting too.
Yeah, as Mr. Aldamland said, it seems a bit scary. Did you find that, Mr. Dekkers?
Some parts of it were, but I think I'm quite an optimist, and I looked at a lot of what they were saying, and they weren't there to scare us. You know, there were certain aspects of it that were a little bit scary as a teacher. There was the comment regarding AI, the university in the United States, where for about 10 months, students using an online platform, like here we use Moodle. Imagine using something like Moodle. You're submitting your assignments and you're receiving feedback through the forums from your tutor teacher, and 10 months later you actually discover that tutor teacher was an AI. And in the United States they had done this in one of the university, and everyone, all of the students were completely unaware for 10 months that they were actually speaking to an AI who was marking their work, giving them feedback and feed forward of what they needed to do next. So that gave me a little bit of a shock and a little bit of a fright. But I mean, a lot of technological change has taken place. And instead of just trying to scare us, you know, they showed us things like letters that had been written to the United States president about the dangers of technology coming in, and that, you know, how many jobs this would lose. And then they showed us the date, and it was 1878 when this first letter was written. And they kind of broke it into a bit of a timeline of technological change over time that's kind of led us to where we are now. So, you know, through all those years there has been change. But it doesn't have to be that scary. It's how you manage it.
So then, Mr. Aldamland, how do you feel about that?
Oh, I agree with Mr. Dekkers that the opportunities are amazing. However, what I do think we need to do as a society is cover things like ethics. You know, we talked about genetic engineering. We talked about, you know, breeding out differences in people. You know, disabilities, that sort of thing. I look at that and I go, that's great. However, isn't that getting rid of diversity? You know, we want to be a very diverse, humanity needs to be diverse so that we have robust conversations and that sort of thing. If we're breeding out diversity, we've got a problem. So I think what we need is in education, we need to bring in ethics, and before we do things like genetic engineering and artificial intelligence and replace teachers with artificial intelligence, we need to have ethical discussions about whether we want it or not and what are the downsides. Now, one of the areas around work was if artificial intelligence is going to take over tasks, we're going to have less time working. What are we going to do with that time? So what will people in society be doing if they've got all this free time? So, yeah, I think that's one key area that we need to really concentrate on, other ethical considerations around these technologies.
So it's mainly like about drawing the fine line between where should we sort of, I wouldn't say put a halt, but more just kind of thinking we can continue on, but where do we kind of just stop?
It's asking yourself that question, just because we can, should we?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
So another concept that you mentioned was exponential change. So can you go a bit further into that?
I think the easiest way to explain that would be to say that, you know, if that change begins, some change can begin quite slowly, but if you think of it as a graph, you may have this slow and steady change, and a lot of research is going on. You're stumbling along the way, and it may feel and seem as though very little progress is being made, but then very quickly when that progress does begin, it really takes off. I suppose an easy example to think about would be autonomous vehicles. So you have a company like Google who, I think it was over the space of 10 years in research with autonomous vehicles, they clocked up 1 million miles of travel in their vehicles, which now Tesla clocks up 1 million miles of travel every 10 hours. So, you know, it starts off very slow and then very quickly it can completely take off.
So then in the future, Mr. Aldamland, we won't drive our own cars?
Exactly. So we've got electric cars starting to come on the scene now, and I hear there is going to be a trial for an autonomous electric car at the Christchurch Airport coming up really soon. So the autonomous cars are going to be amazing and have major impacts on society.
Yeah.
For example, if you own or you won't own an autonomous car, it'll be a ride.
Yeah.
So you'll hire it kind of like the Uber concept.
Yeah.
So you'll dial it up on your cell phone, it'll come and pick you up when you want, drop you at work when you want, and you'll go to work, you won't have to park your car because that car will be off working for someone else. Now, the beauty of that is, if you think of St Andrews, a whole heap of space is tied up with car parking, isn't it? So what could St Andrews do with that space? They could convert it into more classrooms, or they could sell it, which would reduce the fees for StAC's students, which probably would be quite nice. So there's that. But also, you could, if you work in the centre of Christchurch, decide you want to live further out, like Oxford, for example, for the quality of life, knowing that you don't have to waste all this time an hour driving, because you can sit in your autonomous vehicle, which is now set up for you to have a sleep or to do some work, okay, while the autonomous vehicle is driving you there.
Becomes productive time.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Aldamland, you teach business. So, what is the future of the workplace? We won't be working the same way in a few years.
Yeah, and that's the exponential growth thing. You look at computers and you go, oh, you know, we should be working way less than 40 hours a week. Computers have created kind of fairly predictable growth that's linear. Artificial intelligence is going to produce exponential growth, like Mr. Dekkers said. Now, that's going to mean that we're not going to need to work as long. So if we're not working as long, we can be spending more time on leisure. Okay, but the question around that is, how do we earn an income? So that creates another issue.
And then sort of just kind of wrapping up in the questions, we seem to be, would you say that we seem to be facing the biggest kind of questions, like of the do or do nots in the next 100 years?
Less.
Far
Less?
less. And actually
Next
that was the
5 to 10
shock.
years.
That was
Yeah,
actually
it's
the
now.
5 to 10?
Yes.
Wow.
And that was what
That's what exponential means, isn't
really
it?
Yeah.
did blow me away.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're there now.
I think for a long time we've been at the lower end of that curve where a lot of people have been saying, and even the experts
Yeah.
have been saying that yes, this change is coming in the next 10, 20, 30, 40 years. But those experts themselves, actually the world has moved beyond a lot of those people already too, us included.
Well, thank you to both of you, and that's been StAC's 100. Hope to see you guys next time. Goodbye.